Good day, everyone. So today we shall be delving into a very, very important topic known as friction. Friction, the ubiquitous force. We want to understand what friction is and its application as well as its benefits. Okay, so friction actually is an opposing force. Any force that opposes the motion or the movement of an object is known as friction. So we see it as an opposing force that act against the direction of motion whenever two surfaces slide against each other. So it's very key. There must be two surfaces sliding against each other before friction can occur. Now the work of the friction there is to prevent that sliding from continuing, okay, so that eventually it will stop it. So by definition, we say that friction is defined as opposing force that acts at the relative motion between two surfaces in contact. Okay, so is that opposing force that acts at the relative motion between two surfaces in contact. So there must be two surfaces in contact while they are having the motion, then friction occur opposes that motion. So here we can say that the degree of friction is dependent on the nature of the surfaces we are talking about. Now, the higher the roughness of the two surfaces in contact, the higher the friction. But if the two surfaces are smooth, then the friction will be low. So the roughness of surface increases the degree of friction. Smoothness of surface decreases the degree of friction. Okay. Now friction as a double-edged sword. It means that it has an advantage and it has disadvantage. Okay. So it can serve good purpose and it can also be dangerous. Now, when is friction said to be advantage? Number one, because of friction, we can easily move around and walk with our feet. That's because friction exists between the floor and the sole of our feet. If the friction between the floor and the sole of our feet is very, very low, we would have fallen down while we are walking. So the presence of friction enables walking and movement. This same friction allows vehicles to function, allows vehicle brakes to function. You see, today when we enter vehicles and all of a sudden maybe um, a, there is traffic or a sudden um, takeover or crossover by a pedestrian, you see the driver matching the brake. Now, this vehicle would not have stopped if there was no friction between the tires and the floor. Okay, there won't have been any stop. So friction allows vehicles brake to function well. It is because of the friction that exists when the brake is applied that is why the vehicle can stop. So it's an advantage for us. If not, accident will have occurred. Another advantage is that friction keeps bolt and not tightened. If there is no friction and you are tightening bolts along with the knot, you will keep tightening and tightening and tightening, and there will not be any grip because there is no friction. But because of the presence of friction, when you are tightening bolts and not along with it, at the point it will stop tightening because it has firmly gripped. Okay? So it's an advantage. And because of that firmness, whatever you are tightening will remain intact. And lastly, friction prevents object from sliding. If there is no friction and you place an object maybe on on an inclined plane, that object will gradually slide off because friction is existing. Even when you place an object on a horizontal plane too, the object will slide because there is no friction between that object and the surface at which it is placed on. So we have so many advantages of friction, but we just want to talk about these four. Now, as it's been said, whatever has advantage has disadvantage. Now, one of the disadvantages of friction is that it reduces the machine efficiency. When there is high friction in a machine, it does not allow that machine to work efficiently. Okay, it will reduce the effectiveness of that machine because what happens is as the machine is moving, the friction will be reducing the speed of the movement because the essence of friction is to oppose motion. So it does not allow the machine to move at its own pace, whereby reducing its efficiency. Secondly, friction can also cause wearing and tearing of parts of machine. When friction is too high, when we talk about friction, we say two surfaces, okay, two surfaces are interacting, two surfaces are in contact and moving against each other. Now, when there is too much friction between these two surfaces, gradually, the surfaces will be tearing off. Okay, so that's another disadvantage. And when it's tearing off, it eventually damage that surface. All right, and another disadvantage is that friction hinders motion. Imagine you want to move very fast, and like a force restricting your movement. Okay, definitely you will not get to your destination faster. So it hinders motion, it hinders motion rather, and lastly, friction generates unwanted heat in engine. When there is so much friction, it leads toward generation of heat in an engine because when the two objects are rubbing each other for a long time, gradually that area will be getting hot and hot and hot and hot. So there are so many disadvantages that friction can cause. Okay, just like so many advantages and also evils. That is why it is known as a double-edged sword. It does the bad and it does the good as well. All right, let's now talk about the advantage of friction in our daily life. We mentioned some of them earlier. Okay, with friction, we can walk freely with our shoes on the ground and we don't find ourselves slipping up. Secondly, with friction, we can keep both and nut to be securely tightened, preventing it from loosening. Okay, we mentioned this earlier before too. Friction too allows us to apply brake and to slow down the speed of vehicles. And lastly, friction enables ladders to stay. Imagine you want to climb a ladder. It is friction that allows the ladder to stay against the wall that is leaning on. If there is no friction between the wall and the ladder, definitely the ladder will slip off. All right. Now, disadvantages of friction too in our daily life, we mentioned it, reduces efficiency, causes wear and tear, it impaired motion, that it hinders motion, and it causes heating of engine. And that's why sometimes you see some vehicles generating heat, that's because the friction is high. It's not friction that it's not only friction that causes heat in the vehicle anyway, the engine rather, but it's one of the causes of heat when it's in excess. So, what are the applications of friction? We can apply friction in like igniting matches. Today we use lighter, for our cooking gas. But before the invention of lighter, we had the matches. Now, you striking the stick of matches on the carbon part requires you to requires a little force. Now, because of the friction between the stick and the carbon part of the magnet that generates the light that we see. Okay, if there was no friction, if it were just a smooth striking, there was no friction, this light wouldn't have come up. But because a little friction occurred while you were striking the match on the box, that's why you could generate light. Another area of application is sharpening of tools. Today we sharpen our knives and our pencils with uh, knife sharpener or pencil sharpener. That's because there is friction that exists between the sharpener and the knives or the pencil. If there was no friction, if while you're sharpening it was just moving smoothly, you will not succeed in sharpening that knife, neither will you succeed in sharpening that pencil. But because of a little friction that occur while you are trying to sharpen it, that is when you're able to achieve the aim of getting the knife or the pencil sharpened. And lastly is the aspect of floor grip. Okay, because of the presence of friction, our feet can grip to the floor and we can walk firmly on the floor because there is friction between our feet and the floor. Okay, so with that, we will not be able to fall down. But imagine zero friction between your feet and the floor. As soon as you place the first foot on the ground, you are sliding off because there is no friction. So friction has a lot of applications in our daily life. Now that we know that friction has application and we are going to talk about the disadvantage, then there is need to reduce friction when it is being disadvantaged. Okay, when it is at advantage, we don't have to reduce it, but when it is at disadvantage, we need to reduce friction. So how then do we reduce friction? Number one is by lubricating the two surfaces. When you talk about lubrication, you're talking about the application of oil or grease. So you apply oil at the two surfaces in contact so that the friction will be reduced. Okay. Another way of reducing friction is by polishing the surfaces. When you are polishing the surface, it means that you are smoothing the surfaces in contact. And with that, it is going to reduce the roughness of the surface, which will lead to reduction of friction. Okay, remember we said that the higher the roughness, the more the friction. But the smoother the surface, the lower the friction. So when we polish the two surfaces in contact, we are reducing friction. That's another way of reducing friction. If there is name. Another way is called the streamlining. Streamlining simply means designing an object in a way that it will minimize air resistance or fluid resistance. A good example is the airplane or the boat. If you look at boat design, you find out that it is coffee kind of the bottom of it. The reason is to reduce air resistance when it is moving and also fluid resistance. The same thing with aeroplane. So the process is called streamlining, designing of the object in a way that when air blows on it, it does not move. It's not moved by air. Okay, it's able to resist air. Okay, and it's able to resist fluid as well in the case of boat. And lastly is belt drives and pulley. When we use this method, it also reduces friction. This one involves using belt to transfer motion from one point to the other. This process too help in reducing friction. So these are the four ways at which you can what reduce uh, friction between the surfaces in contact. All right. Now, when we talk about lubrication, it just involves the application of oil. You could see where oil is being applied here on these two gears. So, with the presence of this oil, the gear will not have high friction between them. They will be able to move smoothly between their teeth without without high restriction due to friction. Okay, so it's just simply application of oil or grease. to the surfaces so that the surfaces can move smoothly. And with the help of friction too, you reduce noise. Imagine if there is no oil here, and these teeth, the teeth of the gear are hitting each other. You'll be hearing the noise. The kind of clunky noise. Okay, but with the presence of this oil, it will reduce that noise, which is as a result of reduction of friction. All right. Then, what is the takeaway in the lesson today? We're able to define what friction is. We say that it's an opposing force that acts between the two surfaces in contact. Okay, and we say that it has dual nature, meaning that it has advantage and disadvantage. Okay, two edges toward nature. And lastly, we say we can control it by applying lubricant or by polishing or by streamlining the objects or surfaces. All right. So here we're going to be drawing the curtain for today. I hope you have learned something on friction. Right. Thank you for coming and thank you for listening or for watching as well. Have a wonderful day. Bye.